Amber Live, welcome back, everyone. Craig and Midnight here today. How are you today, Midnight?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Onan. Good to be back. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been a little crazy on my end. Of course, that's kind of my life in general, but I've been very, very busy. But I changed up my routine a little bit, so um, I've gone back to working out in the mornings a little bit, uh,
Nice.
and uh, There's I'm a morning person in general, but I don't always like working out in the morning, so I usually worked out in the afternoons or like after work before I went home, and it didn't work very good to like stream and stuff in the at the end of the day. So now that I'm working out in the mornings, um this works really good for me. So should be able to be a little more consistent about it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'd look forward to a consistent streaming schedule so we can put up a resistance
Yeah.
against those mad trads.
Well, they're always mad about something. Like watching the whole thing about Pius, the Society of Pius the 10th, and like the set of a contest were a group I didn't even know existed until like literally 6 months ago on Twitter. I didn't know that was actually a thing. And so
Mhm.
watching them and the SSPX and those folks go back and forth has just been, I don't know, just very fascinating to me.
Yeah. Oh man. Like that's a whole other drama with the I don't know, the threats of schism or versus like claiming to be the one authentic iteration of Catholicism. It's man, it's worse than the Spanish telenovela with all the back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know what and everyone on both sides of it all seem super, super confident in their position. And I'm just like, I don't know. I I mean, I guess the older I get, the more I think about religion, the less confident I am about a lot of things. And so then I'm just like, I feel very, um, I don't know, say sympathetic to the SEDS. I feel sympathetic to the SSPX. I feel very sympathetic to Pope Leo, and I don't know. I just like, I'm like, you go fight about liturgy and all that, and I'll tackle the things that I think make a lot. I don't know, have a lot more impact on people's lives.
Yeah, I have to admit, like, I think you have the patience of a saint. Maybe my patience is running thin with them, but I think one way that I can maybe soften my heart a bit with respect to the trads is like if I really imagine them as like, acting from a place of anxiety and they just want, a sense of spiritual safety and they want to keep their kids and their families in the straight and narrow and they're just working with the best information that they think they have.
Yep.
I think if I frame it from that point of view, then yeah, you're right. I mean, as abrasive or annoying as they can be, maybe there is just it's coming from a place of anxiety and anguish and wanting to be, just in God's good graces because the consequences would be dire
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that, and I still struggle with that a little bit, but I think I wouldn't call myself a universalist necessarily, but I for better or for worse have come to believe that the damnation of the masses can't possibly be right. Now what actually is right, I guess, remains to be seen. And so I guess it's helped me a little bit to be like, either it, if God is good, I don't think the Rippagers of the world can be right. And if Rippager's right, then I think we have a I don't know that we can call God good. Like, and so I maintain the belief that God is good and that we are created good and that we, you know, aside from sin, that this life and this world is good and our relationships are good. And I think most people are sincerely good and trying to be good. I don't think very many people like intentionally try to be malicious. I think most of us are trying to do the best that we can, and with our own limitations and failings and the difficulties that life and the world presents us. And I just it is hard for me to be real judgmental, um a- to anyone other than the most vile of creatures. But I don't know, maybe who knows if I'm right, but that's just my current disposition of life.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm with you there as well. I think I think when you have a more traditional upbringing as you and I have had, it's kind of it takes a while. I mean, I know that it's a lot of trads might say, oh, it's so easy to be Novus Ordo, and you just want to take it, sin and whatever. But when you come from a pretty strict background, it is very difficult to sort of ease up on your view of spirituality and to
Mhm.
it's almost like you can easily forget just how merciful God is in many passages of the Bible and just in the tradition. There are a lot of
Yeah,
descriptions of God as mercy
yeah,
and love and forgiveness and stuff. Yeah, a little brief plug for a project that I did last week. I think I'd shared with you and a few others that I appeared on Once and Future
yeah,
Church at
yeah.
David Larson's podcast to just chat, and the topic was unscrupulosity and fear of hell. And he shared a beautiful citation from I want to say it was Pope Benedict XVI and the encyclical Spe Salvi, which essentially affirms the point that you had said that um that the majority of people do have a disposition of openness towards
Mhm.
goodness and truth. And,
Yep.
we approach it with our set of information, our cultural circumstances, our material circumstances are different. And so, how we apply that to our lives is not going to be the same. It's not going to be one size fits all. But in the sense that that orientation towards seeking the good and the true and the beautiful is already a kind of uh, I hope I'm not butchering it, but almost like that in some sense that makes you a de facto Christian, or at
Mm,
least that gives you some kind of
okay.
connection to God. It doesn't cut you off from grace as long as you really sincerely are trying to maintain a disposition of openness towards the truth.
Yeah. No, I'll have to check that out. Like I said, I've been very busy, so I haven't had a chance to. I caught just a few minutes of it, but so 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 the topic of today's the general topic of today's live stream is uh, I got I got messaged on Twitter recently by a fairly large account that I'm friends with, Catholic guy, good Catholic guy. We He's probably more on this on the traditional spectrum than I am or you are, but also not like raging traditionalist, like a genuinely good guy. And we've DM'd back and forth about some of these topics a little bit, and while he's not as what I would say uh understanding of people's plights as we are, I think he's more understanding than a lot of I would say trads and stuff. But he sent me a message recently, and asked why he was disappointed me that I'm constantly his words denigrating large families, and I wasn't sure what he meant by that. I mean, I say a lot of things on Twitter, and and so I asked for some examples, and he never got back to me. I don't know if he's listening to this or not. I hope he is. I did ask for some examples because I wasn't sure exactly what he was pointing to. Um, he hadn't blocked me or anything yet, so I guess that's a good thing. But um, so I wanted to address that because I can understand how people who maybe don't know me or don't have a context might interpret some of the statements that I make online the wrong way, or at least incomplete. And so obviously I have a large family. I mean, I think most people know, but I have 9 kids. I think by most metrics that's a large family. It's not the largest family, but it's a big family, right? And I would say for the most part purposely so. I mean, I think the timing of some of our kids was maybe not so intentional, but we love having a large family. We think we're done having kids now, but we understand that things can happen. But so it was a little strange to have someone who also has a large family I guess accuse me of being unfair to large families. Um, and I don't think I am. I mean, I sincerely don't feel that way, but I do have some relatively strong opinions that run a little countercultural from some things what I'd say is more of the tradosphere that really bothers me, and so I want to address those because I think that's probably the context of some of the comments that I've made. And one of the things, let me start out by saying this: if you want a large family, have a large family. Like, I'm in no way do I want to discourage anyone from choosing to have a large family. It is amazing. It is very difficult, but it is an amazing thing, and I would never discourage anyone from having a large family if they sincerely want to. However, what really bothers me is how I think a lot of people dismiss the reasons that people have for not having a large family. And that's usually the context of where I tend to input myself and try to cast a little reality on sort of this Mary Poppins view of let's say large family and family life that I think gets kind of like casually thrown around. Oh, he's winning. The more kids, the bigger the winner you are. And I'm like, I mean, if that's what they want, if that's what they want and they can handle it, yeah. But just having more kids without knowing anything else does not make you a winner. It doesn't prove anything about you or the quality of your marriage or the quality of your family. And I think that's just something I don't like the fact that the sort of this traditionalist right wing movement just kind of paints this picture that the more kids you have, the better everyone's life gets, and I don't necessarily think that's true. Certainly not if it's not done voluntarily.
Yeah, it is kind of sad and maybe upsetting, that kids in large families are treated as a kind of virtue signal,
Yeah.
for these circles. And yeah, anyway, I mean, I know I'm biased because we're buddies, but I've never thought that you're denigrating towards families. It's more like you're just correcting the sort of rose-colored view that a lot
Yes.
of people have. And there's between the theology of the body rhetoric and just the celebration of large families and trad circles, I think there is a lot of like disinformation to newly married couples or people that are thinking of coming into the church, kind of like a lot of our newer members in the Discord, that they feel that they didn't receive an adequate amount or proper amount of information for how to navigate marriage and family. Um, and I think maybe some people take your comments as denigration because they really wanna hang on to that
Mhm,
idealized view of things.
mhm.
But I think you sort of have a more grounded or earthy, vision of just like there are real material and emotional costs, and if you're equipped to pay those costs, and you really want it, then have at it. That's empowering, that's beautiful. And I think really the main thing that we're all struggling with is that the decisions that we make in our most intimate of relationships and in our family lives, it's very difficult with all the pressure about, mortal sin and being in the state of grace, not being in state of grace, and you're sort of just in survival mode.
Yeah, and I think that sort of a follow-up to that, one of the things that I think has occurred to me that I don't know, like, some of these people, I don't know that they've reached a stage in life that I am, but, you know, to be honest with you, having a large family is actually not, what was how do I trying to think I wanna say this. It isn't actually so much that it's damaging to the marriage or that it's really hard on the couple. I think I think in many ways it's actually kind of a good deal for mom and dad. What I really have sort of reflected on in the last few years, because I have kids now that are out of the house, and I have more kids that are nearing out of the house, is I've come to appreciate what I think are significant sacrifices that the kids make, and not just sacrifices, but um, I don't want to say trauma, but definite things that they carry with them, things that they miss out on life, um, and not just in material things, but in terms of quality time with your parents, especially at those seasons of your life when you really need them. I think it is the kids that I think are affected the most by large families that I think gets ignored. And I think a lot of couples think that, well, hey, I'm happy. We're happy having a bunch of kids, and I am. I mean, I genuinely love being a dad of a large family, but it's not. I'm not really the one that's really paying the price. I mean, yeah, my life is difficult. My wife's life is especially difficult, but I know now, having still having kids at that in a small age, I understand how many times my older kids did not have me when they probably needed me, and it shows in how they've developed and in our my how my relationship with is with them now. And it I can't even, my ability to help them as they transition in life and go to college and think about having their own family. I'm limited in what I can do, both from a standpoint of time and finances, because I'm still very much in the throes of raising children. And so, to me, that is the thing I think that really bothers me, is they act like, well, just if you know just have more kids, everyone's life gets better. Well, I just don't know that that's true, right? And I think, I think, in one of the reasons that I think this is, I have observed that a lot of times children of large families often don't want kids or don't have large families themselves. It's sort of it's like it skips a generation or two every time. And I think that's telling, the fact that a lot of kids that grow up in that sort of situation choose not to have large families themselves. And I don't think enough attention is given to that, and asking the serious questions about, you know, what should we do with that, if anything, and what should mean for couples as they're discerning how many children to have and things like that. So that really is the primary driver for my, I don't know, I guess my somewhat contrarian views on these things. And then I guess secondarily is the fact that, at least for couples that aren't really willingly choosing this life for them, it is really difficult. And I really dislike the fact that anyone feels like they more or less have to, um, become parents of large families because of moral concerns they have of not really having any realistic moral way to avoid it.
Yeah. Someone from the Discord has a comment. It's, this person doesn't have a YouTube account, so they can't comment directly. So,
Okay.
anyway, someone from the Discord says that, and I quote, "Yes, even with only 4 kids, I see how I need to pick and choose who I can help and how much." So I think that's even with a family about half your size, that those struggles already start to show up even with just, 4 kids.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, a difficult one of the difficulties too in the trad mindset is that, that prevalent notion of suffering is kind of the default setting. And
Yeah.
whenever you come across some difficulty, instead of really having a good honest look and seeing how you can mitigate the circumstances,
Yeah.
the sort of automatic response is just, oh, just offer it up. Or
Yeah.
life is supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
It'll be better in eternity. We're sort of, and I guess it boils down to this sort of transactional view of, we have to sort of use the suffering in this life to eliminate purgatory time, and it's not really about this life. And I understand, like, there's a certain wisdom in not being so attached to the pleasures or the material things of this life. I understand that aspect of Christianity, but it's just, I think they take it so far to where you're just not supposed to fix any of the problems that are staring you in the face.
Yeah, I think it's like distinguishing between fasting and malnourishment. I think fasting is a good disciplinary device, but being malnourished, like not having sort of the basics, offering up malnourishment, I don't think is something that, I mean, I guess it can be virtuous, but we shouldn't willingly allow people or encourage people to be malnourished for the sake of suffering. I think we can certainly recommend prudent fasting. Lent is a good time to think about that. But I just think that when we're talking about what it really takes to have a large family, I think there's a real risk that the couple and or the kids are going to experience malnourishment, not in the physical sense, but in just the general emotional and relational and to some extent spiritual sense that is, I think, not talked about. Like people don't talk about that. People don't maybe not even recognize it. But that to me, so that's where I really I th- that notion that well suffering is good, offer suffering up is I think is a can really be abused and you know o- can kind of gloss over some real problems that people have and hardships that people are undergoing and uh traumas if you will that kids are experiencing as a result of this.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm just checking up on the comments again. I guess another buddy here has commented that traditionalists take it too far because this lug. Oh yeah, all right, you're able to bring it up on screen. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, traditionalists take it too far because this luxury belief of having 10 plus kids is
Mhm.
not historical, as most of the children unfortunately passed away before 5 years old.
Yeah.
Um, mhm.
Yeah, and his follow-up comment, large families before birth control were still rare and, I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of, there's I think it was during the depression or whatever, but people were having to like sell their children or a lot of times children went to live with relatives because it was too much for mom and dad. I mean, even in our community, I know of families where they were, you know, pretty poor, large Catholic families, and the kids were sent off to live with an aunt and uncle and grow up that way. And that is, I think, closer to reality than the Trap family, type
Mhm.
thing. And so I think that point is right. And again, that's one of my main criticisms of traditionalism and this right wing pro-natalist attitude that I think it really has I think it has a very rosy inaccurate or partially inaccurate view of history. Modern traditionalism is not what traditional life looked like before, let's say, the 1950s, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, no, I think they do treat, like, having kids as, like, it's some kind of competitive sport, and I think, especially given the political climate, a lot of it too is about, uh, dominating a geographical region. It's like, group A, we don't want group B to outbreed us, so we gotta sort of,
Yeah.
kind of maintain our culture, maintain our values, and I think there's a lot of that going on in addition to all the typical moral struggles that are part of traditional Catholicism.
Well, I think there are two distinct, this may be not just two, but there are two distinct flavors of traditionalism that I see. The one is the one you just mentioned, and I think it tends to be fairly well-to-do traditionalists that have the means and the ability and have this kind of like you said this they have this kind of moral stir in their heart to propagate to whatever. But then there is, I would say, a second group of people, and I know this from having interacted with people sort of somewhat in private, is they become that by default because they've gotten to the point where life where like, okay, we can't use contraception, NFP sucks, and abstinence. I don't care what anyone says is not a realistic solution for most people. They're like, fine, we'll just become providentialists. Whatever happens, happens. We're kind of wash our hands of responsibility and duty to discern, and you know, uh, we'll just kind of handle it that way. We'll just be constantly, active, and whatever kids count happen. And I really dislike that. I dislike the first of all that people feel compelled to make that choice because for some people NFP is just not a realistic option. I think for a lot of people NFP is not a realistic option.
Yeah, and especially for the ladies that have to pay the price of, like, back-to-back pregnancies,
Yes.
they have a variety of health issues perhaps, and then the dads, it might take a while to stabilize finances, so there's just a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and I look at my own life, I mean, um, we have 9 kids and it is still a struggle. I am still hustling and constantly looking for ways to make some more money and I have a good job, and we live in a fairly, affordable market, right? Uh, I don't know how anyone could possibly do what we do if you had, I would say, more of a kind of an average income and or if you lived in a larger, place, bigger city or places where property and everything is a lot more expensive. I don't know how they do it. Now, one thing I, I want to bring something up because I suspect this could possibly have been the comment that led to that Twitter message, but it was I don't remember what it was. It was one of these kind of right wing trolls was talking about you know having a bunch of kids is winning, and we got into discussion about whether it's even affordable to do so. And I think I made the comment, and I I probably could have worded it a little better because I really didn't mean malice by it, but I basically said I know a lot of traditional Catholics with large families who are on all of the state benefits. They got state health care, food stamps, dental, all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm not here to say what I don't mean to do is to tell people should feel guilty for using that. We have it for a reason, and I have no problem with people making use of that when life throws you some curveballs. What I really really dislike is people thinking that like just abusing that and say, okay, we'll just keep having kids because we're not responsible for the cost. I don't like. I don't like, and they tend to be of the same sort of political genre where they are against welfare, or they're against, think immigrants are, abusing the system or whatever. I just, I, to me, I, I would be more, I would be morally bothered by constantly making use of those, um, benefits that are funded basically by people that don't have a lot of kids, the people that are making good money and don't have a bunch of kids. I I just think if you kind of what I said at the beginning, if you want to have a large family, but take responsibility for that. Don't make other people fund that. I feel very strongly about that. I feel like, you know, and if you can't, and if the only way you can make it work is by being on those programs, and let's be very transparent about that, right? They'll say, well, um, have kids, God will provide. I don't know that that's necessarily putting it in God's hands to be like, okay, well, we'll just take advantage of all these benefits. I think that's a little bit abusing the system a little bit, and and I think I think we're all called to have an element of responsible parenthood that I just don't see, from what I can tell, doesn't seem to be real common in the vocabulary of these kind of traditionalist, pro-natalist type people.
I agree. I think maybe that an analogy would be like it's like we don't go get on the road or on the freeway and we don't wear a seatbelt because God will take care of us. We don't need
Yeah,
a seatbelt, or we don't need to see a doctor. Even though I have symptoms or this or that severe illness, God will take care of it. I think one way that God takes care of things is that, like, he gave us a brain, and he gave us the ability to discover new solutions to various things,
yeah,
obstacles that we face in this life.
yep,
And also, um and to an extent, yeah, of course, we can lean on the community to help us when we're struggling, but it's kind of like it's a matter of proportion and attitude. It's like we don't want to approach that with a sense of entitlement of I'm just going to make
yep,
irresponsible decisions because the
yes,
community will be my safety net. But
yeah,
it's more like if you really just put in a situation and it wasn't like you were being reckless, you were being mindful, but you're in a certain
yeah,
difficulty, maybe it's
yeah,
whether it's a family thing, an illness thing, there's a lot of kids, then yeah, of course, it's a beautiful thing when the community steps up and we support each other. But it
Mhm.
is, yeah, it is that sort of attitude of entitlement of like, I'm just gonna raw dog it and just, whatever happens, happens, and then I'll just lean on all of these social safety nets.
Yeah, I
Um,
just yeah, I mean, I'm open to different viewpoints on that, but that I feel pretty confident that at a bare minimum, we should be people should be more above board and transparent about that, and if that's really what it's taking, and like I said, my own sort of anecdotal experience from knowing people is it's extremely common. I mean, I I just know. I mean, let me tell you, you have a family my size, you're eligible for a lot of things,
mhm.
if you want them, right? And I'm not telling people not to take advantage of those, especially things like, let's say, scholarships and grants and things like that, but, um, you know, I having having large families is, can be wonderful, and I'm grateful for the family that I have, but I feel very strongly that it's not for everyone, and people should not sort of feel guilty if they don't, and shouldn't feel morally coerced into that. People it having kids should be one of the most purposeful events of your life as many times as it happened. I feel really, really strongly about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I've mentioned some variation of this several times, but one thing I sort of, well, for lack of a better word, envy. Now, for all the trads there, I don't mean the capital sin of envy, but that feeling of like, you sort of look at someone and you admire them, and you sort of wish you had that or your community had that. But yeah, it's just like the friends or the acquaintances that I know that they don't have the same quite of tradition, the same type of tradition that we've grown up with, and they're able to be mindful about that, and they're sort of able to establish the solidity of their marriage, establish the solidity of their finances, find a place to live, and then they're able to welcome kids, and it's yeah, maybe it's fewer, and they're using some things they're doing some out of the box solutions like contraception, other acts, and all of that, but when it is that mindful and they have kids when they're ready, there's just this like, they're glowing with enthusiasm, and it's like there's this feeling of having a kid and building a family is like the culmination of a long journey. It wasn't like, you know they had to follow all these rules, and then it just got sprung on them, and now they're kind of scrambling to make everything work, and they're always anxious about, whether it's NFP charts or marital debt, whatever it is. And I think kids do feel that, and I suspect that that's also part of a reason. Some kids in trad circles, it's like I'm not saying that it's just the marriage and family and sex stuff, but I think that atmosphere of anxiety is part of what drives people away from traditional faith.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the major issue, and I was in a discussion about this on Twitter just a couple days ago with I guess, a friend of the show who is not a traditionalist, but is certainly closer to traditionalism than we are, and talking about this a little bit, and I just said, I get messages from people all the time who, because he was kinda asking about why people leave the truth. They leave the church because they don't understand what the church says, and I just like, well, I think there's a lot of really, really good people, especially converts, that love everything about the church, and yet, especially for converts who kind of don't learn this stuff until after they're in the church, they find out the realities of the marriage rules, and how they seem to more and more run afoul of their basic common sense and experience. And for a lot of them, that is sort of the first domino that falls, because they're like, this can't be right. Like, this can't be right. And the church can't possibly be right about this. And if the church is not right about this, well, what else is the church not right about? And it's so sad that, you know, for a lot of people, like I said, I think they would be very good, content, faithful Catholics, happy to share their faith with other people if it weren't for this. And to be honest, and I'll be, in full transparency here, it's the one thing that um gives me pause. I have, think about whether I even want to strongly encourage someone to become Catholic, because I'm like, either I'm going to someone is going to explain to you what you're getting into and you're not going to join, or we kind of keep those details hidden until you get in, and then we spring it on you, and then it feels like kind of a bait and switch. I think is a real problem, um, for the church, that I don't know that has an obvious solution, but it's definitely a problem. And and for those that don't have those kinds of struggles at all, I could just see in their attitudes, well, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. The truth is what the truth is, or follow it. And I'm just, if you've never experienced moral anguish over this kind of stuff, I'm sorry, you're just not going to relate. You're just not going to be able to understand those people. And if that's sort of your response, um, don't be surprised when they don't come back to you and they're either, out of the church entirely, or they're, go join some other faith, or maybe the Orthodox. So, we see that all the time in our Discord, right?
Yeah, just a number of them that have, that they feel that this stuff was not, when they were, what's the word? The OCIA, right? Like the
Yeah.
initiation portion
Yeah.
before you get baptized or you get, received into the church, and yeah, a lot of them seem to have had that thing where the information about, NFP and the, maybe, things pertaining to other acts and just all the details about how to navigate married life. It's just
Yeah.
they somehow discovered it in a setting outside of that initiation process,
Mhm.
and, like, the gravity of it all with, mortal sin,
Mhm.
refraining from receiving communion, and all of that stuff that and it's like that it is a literal obstacle to, I mean, you could be a baptized Catholic and you could be received into the church, but you basically, on paper, wouldn't be allowed to participate in the central rituals and the central prayers, the central sacrament, just because of this thing. And you're right, there is no easy fix. If there is one thing that I could see possibly done, it's the fact that, and I think our friend and resident priest, Father Carr, is of the opinion that, like, the idea of mortal sin is too frequently
Mhm.
abused, and
Yeah.
that we don't have that kind of clarity. I think one possible approach the church could take is to stop focusing on fear-mongering and enforcing guilt and shame, but rather just try to find a way to communicate the message of the beauty of family life, and yeah, acknowledge the sacrifices, but just celebrating the beauty of life and the beauty of marriage, and presenting these things as an ideal that you want to achieve, and you'll really strive and you'll do everything you can to welcome as much life as you and your spouse can handle. But but I think to threaten people into having kids, to threaten people into, you know being cornered into a very kind of single-minded, narrow approach to marriage and intimacy, I think that's really the issue. It's that we can't even celebrate something as an ideal. It's
Mm.
it's kind of like, yeah, this is the Catholic ideal and it's beautiful. And if you don't accept it, then you can't receive communion and you're in a state of mortal sin and your soul is in danger. And
Yeah.
so it's even difficult to accept and admire that there is a lot of beauty in this stuff. But and I think there's an analogous conversation people have been having in Discord about how it's kind of the same thing with, like, this is a beautiful holy day of obligation. Now go to church or else you'll be in mortal sin. And it's like it kind of interferes with your ability to really reflect on the beauty and to want to participate and to want to take that ideal and let it inform your life choices. I think the threat is really what kind of poisons the experience.
Yeah, no, I've really that's something that is really something I really thought a lot about, is and again, I'm sure it's easy to Monday morning quarterback the Pope. I mean, I would not want that job, and the bishops, but yeah, it's just everything is just everything is enforced by the most extreme sort of, punishment, right? The most extreme threat for everything. Whereas, what if it was more like, you know what? fasting and self-denial and almsgiving is in fact a very good virtuous thing that will both build grace and improve the world, and you may find it actually makes you a happier person. Like, I think those 3 things are all very true, and and if we encouraged people to do that, and the church says, "You may not it may not feel like it now, but if you do this, uh, trust us that you are going to be happier in the long run and feel fulfilled because of it if you do it." And I think people would do that, but once it said, "Hey, these are all really great things that will make your life better, but if you don't, you're going to hell." It's just it is. It just it's kind of that poison pill in the bill that's like, ugh, you know? And same thing with and all this stuff, like, like and this is what I've said many, many times. I said, the problem isn't that what do I wanna say? The problem to be solved isn't trying to convince people to stop using birth control. The problem is convincing people, if that's what you wanna do, on the merits and value of being more open to life. Convince people to have more kids. Not persuade people to have more kids, to be more open to life. Don't threaten them with, the worst of all possible punishments if they're not open to life. Those are two very, very different approaches, but, you know, as
Mhm.
Catholics, which one is which is the one that's used? Well, we all know which one is used, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's a lot of demonization, or straw manning of something called the contraceptive mindset, and
Yeah.
yes, there is I'm not saying that's entirely false. There are probably people that really wanna be child free for, let's say, immature or less than noble reasons. But there's also a lot of people that, like, they just l contraception is literally just a tool that's objectively more reliable than NFP to space out
Mhm.
kids. And yeah, maybe if we're gonna go by averages, most people that are able to have a secure marriage and reasonably good finances, maybe the average is somewhere between 2 to 4 kids, and no one really exceeds that maximum, generally speaking. But even then, like, even let's just say according to the Catholic ideal, that's certainly not perfect. You wanna be completely open always, 24/7, 365 days a year, all of that. But still, wouldn't you much rather have a society where, you sort of life gives us enough difficulty and anxiety as is, but even if the methods are imperfect, wouldn't you rather have people just really be enthusiastic about having their 2 to 4 kids and really just raising them with utmost energy and enthusiasm,
Yeah.
um, rather than kind of cornering people into, an anxious approach to having kids into
Yeah.
family?
And the reason why most people have 2 to 4 kids isn't because they're have access to contraception, it's because they have decided, rightly or wrongly, that they don't want or don't feel like they could handle more kids than that. If they felt like they could handle more kids than that and wanted to have more kids than that, they would just stop taking birth control for a while, right? So,
Yeah,
there
yeah.
it is the mentality, that, you know, there are reasons, whether you think they're valid or not, there are reasons why couples, you know, use contraception for a while. I'm honestly surprised as someone that obviously doesn't use contraception. I'm always actually surprised at how many people don't like, when they've had their 2 kids or the 3 kids don't sort of get snipped or fixed or whatever. I
Mhm.
I'm actually honestly surprised at how many people, use something that's not so permanent, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think it is like they recognize that that's such a monumental decision to
yeah,
be permanently
yeah,
fertile or to be permanently infertile.
yes,
Um, and I think there is an appreciation for that, because even the people that are using contraception, they could change their mind.
yes,
Circumstances could be better. And then maybe they have this realization that after kid number 3 or 4, they actually do want another one and they can manage
exactly.
another one.
Yeah, exactly. And that I think is I don't think it's a super fundamental difference other than it's very different in the approach. And I just think that, I mean, you know, let's just look at I want to say what are the results of the more traditional conservative approach since Humanae Vitae? I mean, vast majority of Catholics, you know, use contraception, right? And so it's not as if that approach has been super damn effective. So why not try a little different approach, right? Why, something that it sounds like is a little closer to what the Orthodox do. I really haven't personally studied the Orthodox very much, but from what people have kind of mentioned in our Discord and other places, they seem to take a little more of a uh, nuanced, humane approach to things, and so maybe that is closer to how the Orthodox approach things.
Yeah, it seems that the Orthodox are much less legalistic about,
Mhm.
just like venial and mortal sin, and there's a little bit more, maybe it's the word pastoral. There's a kind of pastoral flexibility. That's not to say that they completely get rid of the ideals, and that they're still. I think they still have a spirit of openness to life. It's just they're not gonna really threaten hell and mortal sin at you if you're
Yeah.
struggling. Yeah. Oh, I think someone in the Discord has a question, or the same person also made a comment about like usury and death penalty and how those teachings have
Mhm.
kind of changed. So there is some flexibility with perhaps. I mean, maybe the apologetics industrial complex won't really openly acknowledge it, but if you consider I think a long time ago, it was either you or Kevin, you guys had Thomas Polega on, and I think he was also mentioning, some historical changes in the church.
Yeah.
But anyway, this person has a question that says, many times it is claimed that contraception will lead to infidelity. Have either of you ever heard of this happening in real life? And they conclude saying, my impression is lack of intimacy is what leads to infidelity. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you have more experience navigating that and
Infidelity?
having a lot of fun. No, no, sorry, not infidelity, but I mean a lot more experience in terms of having lived uh, a long, happy married life, and also maybe you've been surrounded with people that have been married for longer. So yeah, no, Onan is not in. No, let it be struck from anybody's minds that Onan has ever been guilty of infidelity.
Yeah. I I have a lot of my own failings, but that hasn't
Mm,
been one of them. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, I suppose it's possible, but the way I look at it is this. I think whether infidelity and those things happen, and to some degree, even things like porn and those kinds of things, I think whether they happen or not has far less to do with whether the couple is using contraception or NFP, and just more on the, you know, what's the health of your marriage? How do you love each other and receive each other, and do you feel love and secure? And maybe to some extent, contraception or different things could contribute towards that. Um, I suppose that's possible, but I think that's a very, very minor factor. I think it, if anything, it is possibly more of a correlation, not causation thing. This is something that I think is true. I think that by and large, the couples, how do I say this? The couples that are using NFP, for example, most people don't, and the people that put themselves through this tend to be what I would say fairly serious about their faith. Otherwise, why the heck would you do it, right? And so you have this sort of, I don't know, uh, this moral framework that causes you to do some very difficult things that are unpopular, and you're probably more likely to view divorce as not an option, and you're more likely to go to mass together, and there's benefits from that. So I think couples that use contraception, I suppose, are maybe more likely to be um, having the circumstances in their marriage that might make that kind of thing more possible, but not because of the contraception. I don't think so. To me, I mean, it's sort of like, you know, someone that's using NFP. If you're gonna go out and if you're gonna go out and cheat on someone, then what's gonna stop you from like using contraception? There aren't too many Thomists to be like, well, you know, having an affair that's open to life is better than having an affair that's, where there's contraception involved. I mean, if you're going to go out and cheat, you're going to use contraception, right? I mean, even if you're using
Yeah,
NFT,
I
that's
think
my
it
thought.
really is. Yeah, it's sort of like, all of these things are tools.
Exactly.
Contraception in some ways makes infidelity easier because you're removing one of the possible consequences. It's the same way guns make murder easier. Having a
Yeah.
smartphone makes accessing indecent materials easier. But
Yeah.
those are correlations. They're just
Yeah.
modern tools that make certain
Yeah.
things easy, but it's ultimately how you use them and your loyalty to your moral values and stuff. So I don't think it's fair to blame the tool. It's really more how we use them, and hopefully we're using them for good.
Yeah. And I think about my marriage. I mean, I think if my wife and I, let's say there was no moral concern about using contraception, I think there's a really high likelihood we still would have had 6, 7, maybe 9 kids, maybe more kids. Maybe we would have been able to have kids on a timeline that was a little more sensible and allowed us to, let's say make some advancements in our life situation or home situation or employment situation that we'd be like, let's have 10, right? So, so it is a tool. Like I think, and then I think that's the big thing. I think it really is the mindset of the couple. What do they feel like they can handle? What can they handle? And at that point in time, then it's just a tool. Because this is what happens, and I'm gonna come back to this again. What I don't really like is when they'll say, "Well, hey, if you discern you should only have 3 or 4 kids, that's fine. You can use NFP, and if that doesn't work, you've always got total abstinence to back it up." Well, that's just crap. I mean, those are not realistic solutions for a lot of people to the extent that they understand that at some point this starts to damage your marriage and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think there's a reason why um, people that use NFP have large families, and it's not always because they all want to have large families. It's almost it's really really
It's like they
impossible.
stumble onto it rather than
Yes.
really plan it out.
Yes, and I
Um,
that's what that I don't like, and that's one of the things I don't like about this pro-natalist, rah-rah big family culture. It sort of seems to, I don't know, it's that seems to be the response to people that feel like, "Man, I really don't wanna have this many kids." "Oh, it's great, you're gonna be fine," rather than acknowledging the fact that the solutions you're giving to people are ineffective, you try to, like, I don't know, like, um gaslight them into thinking, "Well, it's all great. This is great. Have the more kids you have, the better your life gets and all that." I mean, it feels a little bit like gaslighting to me, and I think that's what irritates me, and that's why I make the comments that I do, because like I said, I'm all for anyone having as many kids as you want. But what I really dislike is people having to have more kids than they are willingly choosing for themselves at that time.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry to be a party pooper. I got, like, just this, like, a 3 or 4-minute warning. I gotta duck out in a bit,
Yeah,
but
me too,
yeah, I still got time to wrap it up. Oh, the same person in the Discord did say, "Sorry, I should have been more clear." They wanted you to comment more on the, I guess, the negative repercussions of a lack of intimacy.
actually.
Not necessarily because of NFP, but maybe
Yeah,
just what that does to a marriage, and maybe if that has a relationship with the temptation towards infidelity.
yeah. I could see that how that could happen. I mean, I could see how I don't think my wife and I were ever, like, at risk of divorce or anything like that, but marriage is really, really hard, and it was hard for a lot of these reasons, and I think people people definitely I wanna say, uh, understate how difficult and how damaging, you know, excessive abstinence, and excessive might be a relative term, but excessive abstinence is to the marriage. And I think they also understate the immense value that regular intimacy has to the marriage, right? And that is absolutely true. And I think that is definitely true. And I think While I personally think there are some um, uh, potential traps that contraception would, that's why I have my own personal reservations about using it, even if we could. There's no doubt that, if a couple is mature and responsible, whatever, I I just don't think that them using contraception is gonna be this, this automatic destruction of the marriage.
Yeah. No, I think it's a little bit too alarmist, and
Yeah.
ironically, I think by being so alarmist about it, the church inadvertently damages its own credibility when commenting on these things.
Yeah, because people could see that that just isn't true. They can see in their own marriages, they can see in their friends' marriages, and so they're like, "Well, that threat wasn't true, so why should I accept the rest of what you say?" That's a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And hopefully, I mean, I think we're assembling, thanks to UCM, we're assembling quite an army of people that are
Mhm.
willing to have these difficult discussions. I think
Yeah,
we're well above 70 members now.
yeah.
So, I
I
mean,
I
maybe even if let's say somewhere between 10 and 20 are the most regularly active, but I think there's a lot of people that at least read the discussions that are happening. So hopefully we become a strong but always respectful presence within the
Yeah.
church so that these discussions keep
Yep.
happening.
Yep. Yep. I hope this clears up for people that maybe were unhappy with my comments, or maybe took them, that if I led people to believe that I really don't like large families or whatever, I hope this clears that up. And I do really, really, really value these conversations because I think they're so important and much needed. And hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, keep me posted. I look forward to joining you for another one of these. You'll have to give me the play-by-play on what's going on in Twitter since I'm doing my very best to give it up
Oh,
for Lent. I
let's use
won't be
the
there to
Twitter.
like, but at the end of Lent, I guess I'm gonna have to just like go through your history and like all your comments because you always have bangers.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, Midnight. I'll let you get to your thing. Thank you, everyone, for who was in the comments. And if you watch this after the fact, let us know in the comments what you think. So, thank you, Midnight. Until next time, everyone.
Yep.
Have
Thanks,
a good one.
Onan. Take it easy.